was intelligent, articulate, and handsome, a young man on the fast track to success.
He looked like a young Cary Grant.
Yet during a grisly killing spree that spanned 5 years, Ted Bundy slaughtered more than 35 women. Serial killer. After nearly 10 years on death row, Bundy was scheduled to die for the 1978 murder of Kimberly Leach, a 12-year-old girl. Yet he admitted to killing more than 30 others in a grisly bloodbath that took him through Washington State, Oregon, Utah, Idaho, and Colorado. After midnight on January 4th, 1974, Ted Bundy stood outside the basement bedroom window of Joni Lenz, an 18-year-old student at the University of Washington. He entered her bedroom through a door accessible from outside, and while she slept, he savagely bludgeoned her with a crowbar. The next morning, Joni was found surrounded by a pool of blood. A bed rod had been torn away from her headboard, and in a sexual frenzy, rammed into her vagina. Linda Ann Healy was a senior at the University of Washington, majoring in psychology. On January 31st, 1974, after Linda had gone to bed, Bundy broke into her room. He knocked her unconscious, wrapped her in bed sheets, and quietly carried Linda out of the house. Her scattered body parts and decapitated skull wouldn't be found for a year. On January 4th, 1974, just days after severing his relationship with Stephanie Brooks, Ted Bundy began his reign of terror. Over the next 6 months, 8 women disappeared from college campuses in Washington, Oregon, and Utah.
I think he was looking for victims 24 hours a day. There were people that he specifically was scoping out, acting like a predator towards, and then there were those that were just happened to be at the right place at the right time for him.
His first 2 victims were students at the University of Washington.
People like to believe that it was someone from outside. There must be some depraved killer out there in the community who is coming to the campus. Little did we know that the killer was one of us.
From February through June 1st, Carol Valenzuela, Nancy Wilcox, Donna Manson, Susan Rancourt, Brenda Ball, and Roberta Parks all vanished. After at least 8 murders, Ted Bundy was becoming an expert at killing. In July of 1974, his addiction led him to take 2 women in one day.
A beautiful Sunday afternoon. It was 90 degrees in Seattle, and we don't get that many 90-degree days. Everybody was at Lake Sammamish State Park.
One of those was Janice Ott. She was lying on the beach when Ted approached her. He had his arm in a sling. He asked if she could help him tie his boat to his car.
When she got up to go with him, she stuck out her hand like she was going to shake hands, and she said, "Hi, I'm Jan," and he said, "Oh, I'm Ted."
Janice walked away with Ted and was never seen alive again. An hour later, Ted was back at the park.
There were at least 4 to 5 other women who were approached between, say, 1 o'clock in the afternoon and 4:30.
But something about Bundy must have put them off. Denise Naslund wasn't as lucky. At about 5 p.m., she walked to the restroom at the lake.
She was there with her boyfriend, her dog, another couple. She left with the dog to go to the bathroom. The dog came back, but she didn't.
By early November 1974, Ted Bundy had murdered at least 11 women in Washington and Oregon, and 2 more in Utah, where he was now living. Early on the morning of August 15th, Bundy's car was stopped by a police officer in Utah. Because he had been driving erratically, his car was searched.
In the midst of that investigation, the trooper found this bag. And in the bag was a crowbar, handcuffs, ski mask. So he carried his own chamber of horrors around with him.
Bundy was immediately arrested on suspicion of burglary. They also found gas receipts and maps that later linked Bundy to the sites of the abductions in Colorado. And more importantly, in a police lineup, Carol Durant identified Bundy as the man who had attacked her. In April of 1977, he was transferred to Colorado to await trial. There, Bundy fired his lawyers and was granted permission to defend himself in the upcoming case.
I've matured in the past year. Believe me, I've grown in the past year, and I've learned a lot of things about myself in the past year. My only misgivings is that I might never be in a position to apply it, on the streets where I'd like to apply it.
But soon he would apply it. On New Year's Eve, 1977, Ted Bundy shimmied through an air duct of the Colorado jail and walked to freedom. Free once again, Ted Bundy would continue to kill. After midnight on January 15, 1978, just 2 weeks after his escape, Bundy entered the back door of the university's Chi Omega sorority house. As his victims slept, Ted Bundy crept from room to room. He bludgeoned, raped, and killed Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman. He assaulted and almost killed roommates Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner.
I think he went in that house to kill every single woman in it.
But Bundy wasn't finished. Less than a mile away, he broke into the apartment of Cheryl Thomas. Though he savagely beat her and left her to die, she survived. She was the 5th woman Bundy had attacked that night. 3 weeks later, he would kill again. His victim was 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, an attractive and popular junior high school student. Kimberly was kidnapped, brutally assaulted, and killed. On February 15, 1978, a patrolman pulled over a VW Bug that had been reported stolen.
Ted tried to flee on foot. There was a struggle. There was actually a round fired, and the officer was able to bring Ted into custody.
Bundy was arrested and identified. Over the following months, investigators in Florida gathered evidence that tied Bundy to Kimberly Leach's murder and the murders and assaults at the sorority house. Though other states sought to extradite Bundy, his first trial would begin in Florida on July 7, 1979. 2 weeks later, Bundy was found guilty and sentenced to death for the murders of Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman. In January 1980, Bundy went on trial for the murder of Kimberly Leach. Again, he was found guilty and sentenced to death.